It was the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. I live in Illinois, and my parents go away on vacation once or twice a year. Usually I go over and house sit as they have two cats. This happened on a windy February night when I was there all alone. I'd locked all the doors before bed and was about to go up when I saw something quickly dart past the window in the kitchen. They have blinds, but they're thin, and you can see shapes and shadows through them. I got a shock, but it was very windy outside, and I wondered if maybe a branch had blown over. I dared to open the blinds and saw nothing but the empty front yard. I was relieved to say the least, and I thought maybe I'd imagined seeing whatever it was. Either way, I wanted to double-check everything was locked up. The front door was okay, but it was only as I walked through the kitchen to check the back door in the pantry that I saw it. Staring me in the face was a grotesque, demonic clown. It smiled, exposing its sharp teeth as I stood there in disbelief for a few moments, stunned and wondering if it was real or just something from my mind. It shook its head and lurched forward from the pantry doors. Then I ran. It was on my heels the whole way up the stairs. It giggled, and I could hear bells shaking as it was mere inches behind me. Finally, I made a hard right at the top of the stairs, which I don't think it was expecting, and I slammed shut the door of my parents' bedroom, which had a lock on it. My phone and keys were downstairs. The only window in the bedroom faced the backyard, and after looking around quickly, I couldn't see anything I could use as a weapon. As I was contemplating what on earth I should do, the clown tried the door handle. I ran over and threw my weight against the door, then tried to shout, but I only managed a muffled scream. I heard footsteps and knew that the clown was walking back down the stairs, away from the bedroom and away from me. I paused for a moment and tried to get my head together. Usually in any type of situation, instinct tells you what to do, but I just didn't know in this case. I really wanted out of that house and wondered if I could jump from the window. As I looked out, I saw not one, but two clowns. They were laughing and each waved at me. My heart sank. Were they going to kill me? I didn't know. I kept watching them to see what they would do. After about 10 minutes, they walked out of the backyard, presumably going through the alley beside the house. I tried to barricade the door as best I could, but I never heard or saw them again. I waited till sunrise before I dared to leave that room. There was a landline phone in my father's office, which was the next room along. The police were quick to arrive. My phone and keys had been taken, but the scariest part was later when I was told that the clown who chased me up the stairs must have gotten in when I went to see the neighbor, hours before the ordeal, since there was no sign of forced entry. As to what they wanted, who knew? Only they did. One thing was for sure, though. It reinforced my hatred and terror of goddamn clowns.
A few years back, I took my girlfriend Lisa to a brand new club that she wanted to try out. Unlike the trendy bars and clubs in town, this one had opened up in the old industrial unit, just on the outskirts of the city. I knew it would be a dive, but I went anyway, as she was excited for it. But on arrival, my suspicions were right. It was basically a factory with a light show and a bar. The music was cool, but the clientele were not what Lisa was expecting. After she used the ladies' bathroom, which she described as being like a drug den, she asked if we could leave. I gladly obliged. We couldn't get an Uber, which was annoying, so we just had to walk back to my apartment, which was about half an hour away, maybe more. The mist was eerie, and it felt odd to be amongst all the factories on a Friday night. I didn't know this part of town well, but I imagined that we wouldn't be returning in a hurry. Whilst approaching one of the larger buildings, we saw a white van parked in the road, and it was rocking. Lisa and I both smiled at each other, and we tried not to laugh as we walked past, but my God, how wrong we were. Through the open side door, we saw a man laying helpless in the back of the van as he was being repeatedly stabbed by what I can only describe as a hell clown. It had a kitchen knife, and the attack was more like a frenzy. Lisa grabbed my hand, and I was about to tell her not to scream when the clown stopped and looked around at us. It was motionless for a few seconds, then leapt out the van and gave us the most god-awful smile. I whispered to Lisa to run, and we got out of there quick. I'd never liked the feeling of being chased, and being chased by a murderous hell clown was like something from a nightmare. Both Lisa and I were athletic and ran track at school, but that just didn't seem enough to get away from this thing. I could hear it behind us, and the alleys that we were running through could come to a dead end at any point. This was true terror. I'd never experienced anything like it. Up ahead, there was a large building with a few lights on. I shouted at Lisa to hurry as I thought people would be in there. But from knocking on the door to having them open, it would take time that we didn't have. I turned around and the clown was about 50 or 60 feet behind us. We wouldn't make it, we'd have to hide somewhere instead. Approaching the compound, there was some open gates to the right-hand side. That would have to do. We didn't have a lot of options left. Once in the perimeter, we darted between some outbuildings, and I caught my shoulder on something that hurt like hell. It was like a maze, which was probably for the best. There were a couple of very obvious hiding places, which we avoided, and we ended up behind a fence in what I guessed was a smoking area. We both crouched down and did our best to get our breath back, and it occurred to me that we should have just stayed in that stupid club. I gave Lisa a hug and whispered that we would be okay. She asked if it was coming for us, and I said no, but after a few minutes it did. I heard the heavy footsteps and signaled to Lisa to be quiet. Through a gap in the fence, I saw that god-awful face only 3 feet away from us. I prayed it didn't enter the smoking area, but there was a moment when I thought it saw me. That smile spread across its face, but some shouting from far away made it turn around and there was a light on it. Then it disappeared, out of my view. A security guard walked past where we were hiding and I told him everything. We spent some of the night in his office, then down at the police station where we felt safe at last. In time, we learned that the deceased man in the van was a drug dealer from Milwaukee named Charles Turner. As for the clown, nothing was ever found.
The following events happened in early October of 2016. I'd woken up early to take my little brother to school. We'd heard stories on the news about the weird clown craze, but I can honestly say I didn't think it would affect us. I'm not a snob, but we lived in an affluent area in LA, and I just couldn't see anything like that happening here. How wrong I was. We saw the first clown in DeFrea Street. Bear in mind that this was before 8 in the morning. My brother Dylan pointed at it, and it just pointed right back. I didn't really know what to do. The road was wide, so we moved to the left to go past it and give it a wide berth, but it began to sidestep towards us. Maybe if it had talked, that would have made it easier, but it didn't. I told Dylan to come back with me, and we quickly left DeFrea Street. I looked back and the clown hadn't followed us. Call me crazy, but I felt like it was keeping guard of that road, not letting anyone in or out. The only problem was that to get to school we had to take a back alley, a route that we didn't usually use. The next clown screamed at us. We'd only just entered the alley when it jumped out from behind a tree. This one was way more scary and aggressive. It roared just like a lion and charged at us. I grabbed Dylan's hand and we ran back out of there. My little brother was sobbing in fear, but all I could think of was getting us safely home and calling the cops. This was way too weird, and I also felt like the scary clown in the alley was positioned there on purpose, like they were flanking us or something. Unfortunately, our ordeal was far from over. Clowns were everywhere. There were at least 2 or 3 in each street. They were all dressed in a similar fashion, but with slight differences, and I felt terrified. I mean, they were scary enough as it was, but it felt like something big was going to happen. One of them tried to block our way, but I ducked under his outstretched arm, and believe me, my keys were out before we reached the house. I've seen too many horror films where that part goes wrong to do it myself. Once inside, I locked the door and checked that the back was locked too. I took some chocolate ice cream out of the fridge for Dylan and told him not to worry. I then called the police, and eventually the operator said she'd send a patrol car out. I refused to believe that nobody else had called them. At 8:45, there was a loud bang, and I pulled the curtain open to see a couple of houses on fire. This was by far the worst part yet. There were also more clowns. I saw a few of them breaking windows, and there was a man lying unconscious further up the road. This was turning into a riot, and we were trapped right in the middle of it. I felt a huge sense of despair at this point and went over and hugged Dylan. We had a basement which was secure, but if our house was set on fire, then we'd be stuck down there. All I could think to do was fill up a bucket of water, and then a brick came through our front window. as the curtains were shut. The glass didn't cover the lounge, but we weren't safe anymore. We went upstairs and hid in my parents' room, who had left for work only an hour before. If there were a fire, then at least we could jump as it wasn't that far down. In the distance, I heard sirens. My brother smiled, and I reassured him that this would be it. I peeked through the window and saw patrol cars. Various objects were thrown at them, but the police were quickly out of the vehicles with guns drawn. The clown army did not go quietly. They used anything they could as weapons, and they were dirty fighters. The police managed to cuff a few of them, but thankfully when the SWAT teams arrived, that all changed. I don't know if the bullets were real or the rubber type used sometimes, but either way, the clowns were quickly taken down at that point. Fire crews soon turned up, and our neighborhood looked like a war zone. I still Google this incident from time to time, and my brother Dylan, who's now 20, gets asked to tell the story at parties and whatnot. Officials said that the clowns organized the rampage online, and chillingly, it was advertised under the title of Carnage Call, where you could apply and choose what street you wanted to ransack. I'm 25 now, and there's not a day that goes by where I don't think of that morning, what could have happened, and whether it will happen again.